The skies above Sicily had twisted into hundreds of perfect smoke rings drifting from Mount Etna's newest crater just days earlier. Even veteran scientists were stunned as ash settled over the city, marking one of the most prolific displays of volcanic rings ever recorded. Why now? And how could a single opening in the volcano produce such a spectacle? The story begins on the night of April 2nd, 2024. Mount Etna rises above Sicily's eastern coast, its flanks stretching nearly 40 kilometers from summit to sea. That evening, attention shifted to one unremarkable point on the southeast crater. At 8:16 p.m., Italy's National Institute of Geophysics and Volcanology raised Etna's aviation color code to yellow, signaling increased summit activity. 14 minutes later, the alert escalated to orange, warning pilots that something unusual was unfolding at the crater's rim. The source was a new vent barely wider than a small car sitting low on the southeast crater floor. Instead of roaring fountains or lava flows, it released short, rhythmic puffs of gas. Yet each burst was forceful enough to send perfectly shaped rings spiraling into the dusk. Every circle traced the exact geometry of the vent, sharply visible against the fading light. Etna's summit is a maze of overlapping craters, but this event belonged solely to the southeast cone, a restless feature that has grown rapidly over the last 2 decades. The new vent lay in a landscape already cut by recent eruptions, its position mapped by INGV volcanologists using GPS and drone surveys. Its geometry mattered. A smooth circular opening free of blockage or jagged edges allowed gases to escape in tight, concentrated pulses. For air traffic officials in Catania, the shift to orange required immediate review of flight paths, though the early emissions carried little ash, only vapor and trace volcanic gases. On the ground, residents in Nicolosi and Zafferana Etnea watched the rings drift upward in silent succession, each floating higher before dissolving into the night. The timing was ideal. Early April brings cool, stable air to Sicily, perfect for vapor to condense and hold its shape. The vent's activity, recorded by seismic sensors and high-speed cameras, began almost exactly at sunset, making the display visible for kilometers across the region. Within hours, social media was filled with images and footage, but scientists moved just as quickly. INGV teams logged every detail, matching webcam recordings with seismic and infrasound data. The vent's location and shape were documented thoroughly as experts realized they were witnessing one of the most concentrated displays of volcanic vortex rings in living memory. A single vent no bigger than a manhole had become the focus of global attention. Its position on the southeast crater the moment it opened, and the precision of its circular rim were all key to understanding how Etna produced this record-breaking show. A perfect volcanic ring begins its journey deep inside the mountain where gas builds beneath the surface. At Etna, the magma column behaves like a pressurized bottle, trapping pockets of gas known as slugs. As these slugs rise through the conduit, they push upward until they reach the vent, a narrow circular opening carved by past eruptions. When a slug bursts free, it sends a pulse of hot gas into the air. The vent's smooth, round edges force the vapor to curl back on itself, spinning into a donut-shaped vortex. These rings are not smoke in the ordinary sense. They consist mostly of water vapor, invisible at first, but condensing instantly as the hot gas meets the cool Sicilian air. This creates the white, ghostly circles drifting above the crater. Mixed within are sulfur dioxide and carbon dioxide, but water vapor dominates, sometimes more than 80% of the ring's mass. The process depends entirely on speed and shape. The gas slug must erupt fast enough to create a sharp pressure pulse estimated at about 40 kilopascals. At the same time, the vent must be nearly ideal, not jagged, not too wide, and cleanly circular. If the opening is rough or blocked, no ring forms. The gas escapes instead as a shapeless cloud. Laboratory experiments help unravel the effect. By firing gas through a circular nozzle with a piston, researchers recreate the same behavior on a small scale. The key lies in the ratio between the gas pulse length and the nozzle diameter. Too short and no ring forms. Too long and the vortex collapses. With the right balance, a stable ring glides forward just like those rising above Etna's summit. Each vortex matches the vent that created it, sometimes stretching several meters across. Because the hot vapor is lighter than the surrounding air, the rings ascend, spinning until turbulence finally tears them apart. Under ideal conditions, a ring can last minutes before fading into the sky. What seems like a fleeting trick is simply physics, pressure, geometry, and condensation shaping volcanic breath into perfect circles. Inside research labs across Europe, scientists have spent years trying to decode the physics behind volcanic vortex rings. On polished workbenches, piston rigs fire bursts of gas through nozzles no wider than a coin. Slow-motion recordings capture each ring as researchers measure size, speed, and stability. The aim is precision models must predict whether a ring will form, how long it will last, how far it will travel, and why some collapse while others rise intact for minutes. Computational fluid dynamics pushes the work further. Supercomputers simulate the chaos inside Etna's vent, tracking every swirl of vapor as it escapes into open air. Make the vent slightly jagged, and the model shows the vortex unraveling instantly. Adjust exit velocity or pulse duration, and the outcome transforms again. One parameter proves critical: the stroke ratio, the length of the gas slug compared to the vent's diameter. Too short, no ring. Too long, and the vortex tears apart. Only within a narrow range do simulations match what Etna produces. Yet even these advanced models have limits. Laboratory rings are small, the air is still, and nothing matches the raw scale of a volcano. CFD can predict the birth of a ring, but not the influence of wind turbulence or subtle shifts in vent geometry caused by a single falling rock. Field data from Etna gathered by high-speed cameras, pressure sensors, and gas analyzers reveal patterns. Models struggle to explain flawless circles one day, ragged shapes the next. Each new ring becomes a real-world test, a reminder that more sensors and more observations are needed to fully understand the volcano's behavior. Long before seismic sensors and high-speed cameras captured Etna's every pulse, the people living along its slopes watched the rings with awe and superstition. The earliest written account dates to 1724, when a Sicilian priest described perfect circles of vapor rising from the crater like halos drifting above the mountain. Over time, shepherds, farmers, and travelers gave them names of their own, imagining the rings as the breath of giants or the smoke signals of ancient gods. Modern volcanologists inherited that fascination, though, with scientific tools in hand. Boris Banki, a senior researcher at Italy's National Institute of Geophysics and Volcanology, has documented Etna for decades. In his notes, the year 2000 stands apart: more than 5,000 rings counted, a record unmatched by any other volcano. Banki calls Etna the Lady of the Rings, a nickname embraced by local guides who lead visitors toward the crater. For them, the rings are a living expression of the volcano itself, a reminder that Etna is always communicating even in moments of calm. Simona Scalo, another INGV expert, observes that each generation assigns new meaning to the phenomenon. Once considered omens, the rings are now attractions for tourists and subjects of rigorous study. Guides from Nicolosi and Zaffarana Etnea recall nights when dozens of rings drifted above the summit, greeted with cheers from crowds gathered on the lower slopes. Social media has amplified the spectacle, but the sense of wonder mirrors centuries of tradition. Etna's rings are woven into the cultural identity of eastern Sicily, passed down in stories and celebrated in local festivals. What was once a mystery witnessed by few has become a shared symbol, though its message in vapor remains elusive. Every pulse from Etna's new vent follows a familiar routine inside the INGV observatory. On a typical day, their screens display real-time seismic traces, infrasound readings, and gas measurements, each spike hinting at activity 1,000 meters above. The recent rush of vapor rings triggered no alarms, only heightened attention. For volcanologists, these rings are more than a spectacle. They are a sign that the volcano is releasing pressure in a controlled way. Each ring marks a burst of gas that might otherwise accumulate inside the mountain, lowering the risk of sudden explosive behavior. This type of degassing is well understood. The rings consist mostly of water vapor with smaller amounts of sulfur dioxide and carbon dioxide. When these gases escape steadily, they carry away energy that could otherwise drive hazardous events. The INGV team compares these emissions with records from previous years. While the vent's frequency and precision are unusual, the underlying mechanism is familiar. No ash plumes have appeared, no lava fountains, no tremors strong enough to shake windows in nearby villages. Life around Etna continues unchanged. Farmers work their fields, lights in Catania glow undisturbed at night, and air traffic controllers monitor the skies but find no threat from the vapor itself. Ash is always the main concern for aviation, yet this event has produced almost none. Tourists gather on the slopes with cameras ready as guides explain the science behind the rings. At the observatory, vigilance remains constant. Instruments are checked, data reviewed, emergency plans kept ready. But the current display with dozens to hundreds of rings each day signals a volcano breathing rather than threatening. For now, Etna's message is clear: pressure released, hazard low, and scientists watching for any shift in rhythm. On Etna's slopes, every burst from the vent sets off a chain of measurements. High-speed webcams mounted on steel towers and linked to the INGV observatory capture each ring the moment it forms. At the same instant, seismic sensors embedded in volcanic rock record a sharp jolt, a pressure wave racing outward. When researchers align these signals, a precise pattern appears. Every visible ring corresponds to a spike in the seismic trace, the two signals moving in perfect sync. Frame by frame, the cameras show the rings leaving the vent at remarkable speed. Calculations using video timestamps and known distances reveal exit velocities reaching tens of meters per second. As the rings rise, they expand their widening diameters, reflecting the vent's circular outline, sometimes growing several meters across before fading into the sky. Each ring becomes a measurable event tracked from the first seismic blip to the final wisp of condensation. This synchronization is more than a technical feat. It proves that the rings originate at the instant of overpressure release, not from gradual leaks or shifting winds. The real-time link between the seismic pulse and the camera image confirms that physical models hold true in the field. A single sharp burst of gas shaped by the vent and propelled upward at high speed is all it takes to launch a perfect ring. For scientists, this is the closest they can come to watching the volcano's heartbeat. Each vapor circle is a visible signature of the forces moving deep beneath Etna's summit. Across the INGV observatory, telemetry dashboards stream live data from sensors scattered along Etna's flanks. Every pressure spike, seismic jolt, and vapor pulse is logged in real time. When the new vent opened in April 2024, the system captured each ring's formation, time-stamped and cross-referenced for scientists and civil protection authorities. Algorithms sift through constant noise-flagging anomalies in gas output or rhythm. A sudden change in pulse frequency, a spike in sulfur dioxide, or a drop in exit velocity can trigger alerts that reach aviation officials and local authorities within seconds. The network is the result of decades of upgrades. Automated tools now link webcam footage with seismic and infrasound signals, so that when a ring appears, the source event has already been mapped. The data feed directly into advisories for Catania's airport. If ash begins mixing with vapor, the system can recommend flight path adjustments before any plane departs. During the current episode, emissions have remained almost entirely vapor, keeping the risk minimal. But every tool stands ready for a shift in behavior. Predictive models use these data streams to look ahead. By comparing current patterns with archives from past years, scientists estimate how long the vent may remain active, whether ring frequency indicates a stable conduit, or whether deeper unrest is developing. It creates a kind of volcanic early warning system built on a continuous record of Etna's breath. For communities on the slopes and the aircraft passing overhead, this vigilance is as much a part of the volcano's rhythm as the rings themselves. Mount Etna's smoke rings are more than a spectacle. They are an active signal from one of Earth's most dynamic volcanoes. As scientists continue tracking its steady outbursts, the boundary between wonder and warning grows thin. Nature's messages can be beautiful, but they are never without meaning. Each ring is a reminder of pressure shifting deep within the mountain and of how quickly stability can change. What do you see in the sky above Etna?